Well, it's
So
great to be here.
welcome. I'm
Great to
delighted to
share.
be with you. I'm Gregg Kendrick. Though Ted gave some introduction there, but uh, I am a certified NVC trainer. I've done a lot of work both with NVC and Sociocracy. I think the key thing to note about me is that I specialize in workplaces. It could be any kind of workplace, a nonprofit, a for-profit, a governmental agency, a university, department, all kinds of places that people live and work in. And sort of the ground basis of what I do, it's all needs-based focused. So needs serve the foundations of the work I do, whether that's organizational development or leadership development. And NVC and the sociocratic process play big parts in both of those. So I'm gonna share a slide, and I want to bring in Adam Feldbauer. What I want to feature today is a particular organization that I've worked with for several years. Adam is the CEO of that organization, and it's I think, an intriguing way of bringing in sociocratic processes within an existing workplace sort of scenario. So Adam, let me introduce you, and if you'd like to say a few words about yourself here.
Thanks, Greg. Yes, I became CEO of a senior living facility, and Greg has been helping support our organization's culture change, and through one of the ways is introducing the sociocratic method, in particularly with our employee handbook and the policies that govern our facility.
All right, so the focus here then is a fairly simple implementation of a policy circle within Adam's organization at Martha Jefferson House. There's the two of us. Adam's CEO and president there. I have my own organization called Basilea that does consulting and training around conscious leadership, conscious organizations. Again, embedded in that is the sociocratic process and NVC and some other things as well. So here's the intention of what I wanted to offer with Adam's support here, is a simple example of how one can introduce the sociocratic process in a workplace environment. The challenge I meet over and over again is that workplace environments already have an existing structure. They have a power structure. They have a competency level within that power structure. There is a great reluctance to suddenly shift all that to a circle method where leaders show up very differently. It's very unclear how they sustain their businesses with such a dramatic change, unless in the rare example, people are so enlightened or so into wanting to have a different kind of organization that they commit to it and take their risks. I would say that was true of myself in my own organization back in 2000 when I wanted to explore what this might look like in an organization. But there are fewer of those. So I tend, when I bring the sociocratic process in a workplace environment, to bring some piece of it, such as maybe election of people, or using rounds as a way of including people in a discussion, or even the structure of a process of a decision, whether or not that's a consent decision process or not. And I may introduce consent decision making to be another way that people could make decisions within groups. Notice every one of these is just taking different elements of the sociocratic process. So what I love about this work with Adam was this idea of creating a policy circle with the fullness of what the sociocratic process is, without changing anything else in the organization. So it really becomes a policy setting group within the organization that sets the overall company policy of what's going on there. All right. So with that, let's look at some of the details here. There's a picture of Martha Jefferson House. It's here in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a historic home. feels very much like home, and that's one of the features of this. So I have in fact, Adam, why don't you share? I've just highlighted a few elements, and please, would you connect with these in terms of who Martha Jefferson House is?
Well, we feel like we are the hidden gem in Charlottesville in terms of senior living. We consider ourselves more of a bed and breakfast type versus Holiday Inn, hotel-ish, more country club than, where a resident come in and they are literally walking into a house, as you can see from the picture, and just feel the warmth of the facility through the environment and the people.
Good. So it is a nonprofit. They have both assisted living and nursing care facilities there. They've got about 50 residents, and correct me, Adam, if I've got any of this wrong. They've got about 80 employees. Mentioned the historic property, a family-like environment. I think what's important to note is that the sense is that this is a place that provides extraordinary care, so that relationships matter, people matter, and so having structures that value people, whether that be staff or the residents, are much more in keeping with the essence of the facility. So, Adam, I'd love to start with you. So why set up a policy circle? What connected with you that you sense that perhaps this would be a good way of setting policies at Martha Jefferson House?
Well, when I arrived to Martha Jefferson House, there was some disorganization around the policies and the handbook. It hadn't been updated for a number of years. So we knew that we needed to start updating even, positions, or, even offices had become different in different locations. We needed to update our different plans. And one thing that was really challenging was when the employees, the frontline staff, didn't know, who made the decision. Was it Adam, the CEO? Was it the HR director? If it was food related, was it the dining director? There was a lack of, who has the ultimate authority around X decision. And one thing that the sociocratic method, offered to enhance, communication and trust was that any and all, policies related, unless they had to do with legal or compliance, or for unless it had to do with not benefiting the community, then it got brought to this circle, and we were able to make a decision. I don't know how far you want me to go into the process, but that's, the why is it ultimately gave full awareness to what policies needed to be discussed. And then it wasn't just a one person authoritarian decision, or maybe a couple people decision. It gave room for representatives of each department to have their say, and to move forward with the decision as a collective group.
Good, excellent. I'm particularly hearing, so it gives clarity of who has the authority to make decisions. It has an inclusive nature as well, that the decisions are made not by one, but by a group of people. And that it became a forum for people to then bring issues or changes that they want to a group, rather than the sort of nebulous, if I want to change, who do I take it to? What's the process? How do we make something happen?
Exactly. So, and on various levels, like we even had, we provide free lunches to our staff members, and one staff member thought that they deserved to have, croutons or whatever additional items on the salad. So we've had things that could be as minute as that up to, real decisions, such, not real, but bigger, decisions such as, when employees holiday, or how the time frame that they're allowed to take their holiday break. So it's a wide variety.
Good, thank you. So some specifics about the policy circle at Martha Jefferson House. There's approximately 9 members, and again, it depends on the structure at any given time, but right now I believe this is true, that include the executive director, CEO, Adam, as well as all the department directors at Martha Jefferson House. And each of the departments that have more than one person in it, there's a few single person departments, elect a representative to serve a term in the policy circle. Now, and this is, so here's an interesting piece about if you put a single sociocratic element in a structure that's overall not sociocratic, what we do strive to do is go into each of the departments, bring all the people who are a part of that department, and actually have a sociocratic election, and we support them in what that means, so that they are then selecting a representative that each of these department wants to serve on the policy circle. So it does have the representation, but keep in mind it's just a single circle sitting in the organization that includes effectively the leadership team, which are the first 2 groups here, and then representatives from the departments. The next thing I'd highlight is it's the full, I call sociocracy the sociocratic circle method. I call NVC, for those of you who are familiar with that, needs-based communication. And I use both of those terms in language because it's something that business can wrap around without being stimulated that they're getting something they don't want. Most businesses don't want anocracy in their structures. They're just here to do work and do business. So calling it the sociocratic circle method, it actually to me is closer to what it is. And frankly, needs-based communication is closer to me to what it is in a pragmatic way of pointing to the thing that is the heart of the process. So, but this is the full implementation of sociocracy in this singular circle so that people are trained in being facilitators, of being log keepers, of the full process of making decisions by consent. It all lives within this circle of how they're making these policy decisions. And it's a circle that meets monthly on the 2nd Tuesday, unless they shift it in any given month of what's happening. So just to give a little overview there. Kind of the final piece of just, what we want to bring to you, and then we'd love to hear your questions. It's just, so Adam, what's the impact of the policy circle been? How long has it been going approximately at this point in time?
I want to say 1.5 to 2 years. Sounds about right.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So in our first, even representatives in the circle have commented several times, in the past few meetings of how far we've come, from the very first meeting of, most of the people on there hadn't even read the entire employee handbook. There was so much that we had to go through, which, we did knowingly know that we had to update the book, but from that time frame, we've gone through the book and now gotten the majority of things settled. But now, like in the last meeting that we had, a staff member brought forth a written proposal. She wasn't even a member of the policy circle. She just came to present her thought on what should be discussed. And so she actually got to observe how the process worked. She felt at the end that she felt heard, that she, has a much better understanding of how the circle works, and was just very appreciative of it. So we've come a long way in many different aspects.
One of the things I have noted that some of the representatives, as they participate in the policy circle, again, as a full member making policy decisions for the whole organization, is a certain awareness of what's involved as they make policies. I think many of them had sort of a singular view of policies, and then in the process of the discussions in the policy circle, they're hearing so many different viewpoints of how the policies affect all people or the organization, that they were, I guess, surprised that it was enlightening to them to get a better, richer view of what it means to set policies. Sort of a humbling sense is what I got about that. What seems so clear, like they might say that this policy is against employees, and yet when they come in and they hear all of the factors that are being held, some of them financial, for instance, some of them needs of others that might be impacted by the decisions. Again, no policy change happens without their consent, so that they seek some level of understanding around the various factors that are there. So I see that as a big piece of it. All right, so we wanted to leave ample time for you to ask your questions. So we've got a basic thing that's done, but we would like to meet you where you are, where your interest is in terms of getting an understanding of what's happening here. And again, I didn't say this explicitly, but otherwise this organization runs just like most organizations run. So Adam's the CEO, he's got full authority in the operations. In fact, this may be important to note, when I'm implementing something like a policy circle, then the CEO, whoever has the authority to make policy, needs to delegate that authority to the policy circle in a very clear way. So that they're saying, I'm taking this domain of my decision-making authority and I am vesting it in this policy circle. And I'm very clear, as I was coaching Adam, what this means is, Adam, is that this group makes decisions about policy that you don't override. You are part of the decision, you're a member of the circle, so you can give consent and your voice can be heard. But you cannot override, you have delegated it. Now, what you can do is you can undelegate it. You can basically dissolve the policy circle and take it all back. You have the authority to do that. But if we're going to have trust in the system, it is absolutely vital that the leader who empowers a circle to function within a domain understand that they are relinquishing that domain to do their work, that the leader, in this case, Adam as CEO, no longer sets policy for the organization within this, the container that the policy circle holds. All right, so how about some questions? Ted, I see some posted here. I'll just go through them. I see something, I hear something about croutons and food at elder care facilities. I don't see a request in that, I don't think. I will say we're actively working to ever enhance the quality of food here. All right, so I see, is it Maria? How can we avail an e-copy if possible at all? So asking for copy, this is just a policy handbook. We work on domestic worker issues and employer organizations like Caring Across Generations in California. So I guess, Adam, I'm hearing that as a request to see the policy book that you have.
Yeah. So at this time, it is just private for current employees of Martha Jefferson House. We have not distributed the handbook as a whole outside of here. I think it would be, I could be available to send specific policies or general, but the book as a whole, we just haven't done that. And
you're not ready to do it yet, is what I'm hearing.
Not ready to do that yet.
I will say I work with a number of organizations. I don't think that the policies themselves are that different than what other organizations have. What's different is the way they go about changing those policies. So I'm not sure, Maria, that you would get much of unique benefit out of actually seeing the policy book itself. John, you're asking, how does the policy circle relate and or engage with the nonprofits board? The answer right now is really not at all. The board is at a different level, and this is an operational policy circle. It sets policies for the operations. The board is aware of it, but does not interact with it in any particular way. I don't even know that it's been brought to strong attention to the board at this point in time, but I do know they're aware of it. I'm also a board member here, so I can speak with some authority on how the board is holding that. I will say in terms of the board, and I'm speaking as a consultant here, that part of my desire in implementing a policy circle is the organization gets to taste a sociocratic environment, gets to taste the potency, gets to experience the shift in leadership. I very often, it has to be experienced, but to me, sociocracy doesn't diminish a CEO's authority, it amplifies it when it's brought into a circle. Because the CEO being a part of the policy circle still has as much potency and power over that decision as he had before in Adam's case. And he's got the wisdom and the input of all the other members on the policy circle. And I can also speak from my own personal experience of bringing it into my organization, both my fear of doing it initially, and then my shock and surprise at the quality of decisions that came out of circle decisions at a leadership level that were far and away better than what I would have done by myself. I was really, in a positive way, overwhelmed with the quality of how circles are able to hold that at a leadership level, something that the CEO might have held before. All right. I'll just keep marching through these. Has the tone changed in some of the other groups as a result of the policy circle using sociocracy? Adam, what say ye about that? Has the tone changed in other groups within Martha Jefferson House as a result of the policy circle?
Well, I think by groups in our organization, that would mean like different departments. And so since each department is represented at the policy circle, it empowers, like, so for example, a frontline staff member who may not have quote unquote any authority actually does have the responsibility to bring policies, even if they don't agree with them. So like if a housekeeper, wants something to be brought up to the policy circle and the housekeeping representative doesn't agree with it, they still must bring it forth and present it to the said group. And so they have that outlet. That's part of their responsibility to be on the policy circle. So I think just in terms of has it changed the groups, it's more open. Now there's more clarity around, okay, I have an issue, concern. I don't have to seek out HR or the director of this or that department or the CEO. I go to the meeting on the second Tuesday of the month or talk to my representative.
Yeah, I think that's a huge change, is the change in transparency and accessibility. So things that used to be sort of in a black hole somewhere that just got popped out and were done to us, all of a sudden we are at least more connected to how it happens, and there's a transparent process in making that happen. Ted, I'm looking at your question. When would that happen, that he'd resolve the policy circle? Are there any steps defined around that? Is that dissolve the policy circle?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say my hope is that doesn't happen, but what I am, when I want to recognize his authority to do that. And to me, it's in sociocracy, in any organization, authority matters and clarity of authority matters. And to me, authority always flows down into an organization. And so you need that clarity of who has the authority to do what. And so in this case, it flows through the CEO. He empowers the policy circle. I see it as a fairly draconian thing, just like any circle in any sociocratic structure can dissolve a lower structure with a decision of the circle, of the higher circle. That is always an element. In this case, Adam is singular because he holds the full authority in himself because he lives in a traditional structure. So he could do that singularly. I would strongly discourage it unless there is some really strong motivating reason to do that, because you've set in motion something that values staff, values employees, values their input, creates a structure of transparency. There's so many benefits in terms of meeting the human needs of the staff through this group, and to take that away will have an adverse impact. So I see it as draconian as, you know, any sociocratic system dissolving a circle. I can only imagine it's out of gross dysfunction or it's out of obsolescence at some point. You just don't need it anymore, which is probably the easier solution, but either one could happen. And are there steps defined? No, it'd be one day Adam would come in and he'd say, you know, we tried it. I sort of liked it, but I'm getting rid of it, because he has the authority to do it however he wants to. There is no process. Because it will always be in his authority to do that, because that's where the authority comes from, unless that changes at some level. I do have a hope that by experiencing the policy circle, that it flows to other parts of the organization, including up to the board perhaps, and deeper into the departments. But it can happen whenever it happens, if it happens, in terms of flowing. Adam, that's my hope. You don't have to share in that hope.
We certainly use different parts of it in different meeting styles that we have, and particularly rounds, checking in, facilitators, scribes. So we don't formalize it as much in some of our other meetings, but we certainly, you know, have some of the similarities.
Right, there's certainly elements. And again, that just goes to how I like to bring in elements of sociocracy into different aspects where they can bring value. All right, proceeding forward. Sheila, is it up to the CEO to determine which types of decisions go to the policy circle? Adam?
I encourage anybody can bring anything to the policy circle. I just request that we do it in the proper format, that they send it out before time so we can do our homework and not come in unprepared.
Yes, of course.
I don't filter
How do you
anything
teach your students sociocracy, or do you teach your students sociocracy?
And essentially, the domain is what is
yes,
in the policy circle are
that's
related things. You know,
partly it's learning by doing.
They are, these sort of facilities have a lot of regulations, so those are non-negotiable.
Circles. So every student.
But there's essentially no policies that aren't included in the policy circle. All right, Ted, croutons as a status symbol blew my mind. Yes. All right, more discussion of food as status symbol. All right. Thank you for your work. Okay. Are there plans to expand sociocracy to operational functions? If so, how and when is there a voice for residents in policy? So 2 questions. Do you have a plan right now, Adam, for extending this into other operational areas, the sociocratic process?
No, not. If anything, it would go to the board level. Our residents have voted annually, as part of regulations, we ask if they want to form a formal resident council, and every year they decline and prefer what we call informal gatherings. And so the residents aren't requesting it; they're satisfied with us doing all the paperwork and all that fun stuff. But if at the next level would be board's formality of using it.
Good. Yeah, so there's no formal structures for what you're asking for there. Maria, can we share with you our vision of justice for caregivers too? I'm not sure where or when you want to do that, but go for it. Mike Bellamy, has the experience of using sociocracy in the one area encouraged any inclination for lower levels of decision-making, sociocracy, their method of decision-making? So I think I'm interpreting that as, have other like departments within the organization been inspired to move to a sociocratic way of holding their department? Have you seen any of that in your various departments? So how have you seen sociocracy perhaps show up in the departments? And has there been an inclination to do more of it based on the experience of the policy circle?
I think just in an informal, it's a formal, informal way where just based in our meetings, I think through rounding, just the ability for inclusion in department decision making, but not so much, we haven't seen it yet as to the formality of consent decision makings. It's more so ran by the director and supervisor, and then just information sharing throughout.
Simbri is asking, it might be better to share the bylaws. Is that possible? Well, Simbri, I'll again share. In fact, we just revised the bylaws, but the bylaws also are very traditional bylaws. There's nothing about the way the organization is organized that is sociocratic. So the bylaws are traditional. You know, operationally, it essentially runs as a traditional organization. This policy circle is just sitting in the midst of that. Okay, so Danilo, I think I'm going to need you to come online and explain. You said how much from Buurtzorg's experience did you use as a starting point? Since I don't know what Buurtzorg's experience is, could you clue me in, or maybe that just answered your question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it answered, Greg. Thank you. Buurtzorg is it's a healthy facility in Holland, I think, yes. And they have a very interesting story about how they use a very self-management structure and governance structure with policies and all. And since it's from the same type of organization, I thought that maybe you guys used some of its experiences, but you answered me with a question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll tell you something interesting. My own trust in the sociocratic process came out of, in my own organization, as I was wanting to bring needs consciousness into it, that I just imagined into that our structures have power over in them, our structures have you know, preferential treatment for some people versus others. So how do we shift our structure in a way that it holds human needs? And so what came to me, if we're not going to have power over, then power must be held in collections of people. So in fact, simply based on wanting a structure that values the needs of people, that I came up with a structure that was in fact a hierarchy of circles, that we made decisions collectively. We used the NVC process of objections around making those decisions. But when I finally met the sociocratic process, it looked so familiar to me based on what we had created simply through a needs, kind of holding a needs focus, and then what would the structure be that flows out of that. Now granted, the sociocratic process was much more robust. I did not have double linking, for instance, in what I did. I did not have the refinement of consent decision making. But by and large, I think what's beautiful about all of this work is it is all fueled by the same consciousness that will lead us to similar places. I just find that very beautiful about the work, that we can engage with one another from our authentic experiences in this. All right, so Sheila's asking, what do you mean by an operational policy circle? Any policy is to set, they will do operations. Correction, what do you mean by an operational policy circle? Any policy is set, how they will do operations. Okay, I didn't hear any difference there, but essentially by an operational policy circle, it's below the board. The board sets a certain level of board policy. That still happens in the board by however the board chooses to do that by the bylaws. Comes down into the operations of the organization. That is, under Adam, he's there to carry out the mission of the organization on a day-to-day basis. And so he is setting, by empowering the policy circle, they are setting policy for all of the staff that gets the work done, but it does not impact the board. But it impacts Adam and everyone else who is getting the work done, the dining team, the nursing team, the human resources, etc. So I'm distinguishing, this is more of a business distinction, that the board hires a CEO to run the operations of the organization. That's what I mean operationally. Less so the sociocratic distinction between operation and policy, or whatever that might be. All right, we already talked about the bylaws. There is no sociocracy in the bylaws. All right, I think we've answered that question. Ted says, that's like having an appeal process and never using it as my community.
That was in reference to the possibility that Adam, whatever the word was, the policy circle, resolve, dissolve, which one was it now?
Yeah.
So sometimes just, sometimes knowing that some power can be taken away or be used changes things, and sometimes just knowing that you could means that you won't. Like in my community, having an appeal process, just knowing that it exists has calmed everybody down enough to be willing to live without it, basically.
Yeah.
So that was just the context for that comment. It made more sense when I typed it.
Yeah. Well, in a way, I'm still seeing it as not much different than in a sociocratic process when you dissolve a lower circle. And yet it rests in a single person. So it can be at the whims of the person. And frankly, as someone who's used to holding essentially absolute power for the operations of the organization, it can be very tempting, right? It can be very tempting. Oh, that's not the decision I wanted. I'm just going to override this decision because I don't think it's the best one. Now, I would have to ask, why did you consent to it if you want to override it now? But there is the challenge of holding power in these existing workplaces where one has had the ability to exercise that power pretty much without, however one wants to, that one has not been tempered as a CEO of an organization, someone telling you, you don't have the authority to do that. And so that, in fact, is the huge hurdle to bringing a sociocratic environment in there. And why I think this is significant, where the CEO has said, okay, at least around the policies of how we function as an organization, I am delegating that to a circle of us, including myself, including these other people. But I believe one does that for a reason, and I don't believe there would be a reason to shift that, as long as one values inclusivity, the values that show up, autonomy, that people are making their own choices, representation across the various levels of the organization. No, I'm agreeing with John's description of the circle's domain below the CEO. Essentially the general leadership circle is what I call it, and below that is what this impacts. It does not impact the top circle or the board level decisions. All right, Simbri is asking, Adam and Greg, have you heard of Living Well? They are an elder care facility in Vermont, which has been doing sociocracy with clients for 20 years, I think. Adam, have you heard of Living Well? Oh, you're muted right now, Adam.
I have not heard of them, but thank you for sharing the link. I'll certainly read up on them.
You will know more about them shortly, I'm hearing.
Yeah, very curious.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've heard of them. It's the name I'm not sure of. I am sure I have been aware of some other similar facilities using sociocracy. I don't recall if it was specifically Living Well. And there's something published here from Cimbria, an upload, Living Well group final draft. I'm not sure what it is, but it's something about Living Well. It must be, it's Sociocracy for All. Okay, there are articles on our website about it. So there's some links here, Adam, that may lead you to see.
Thank you.
Okay, Ted's telling us in 2 minutes, and this was probably several minutes ago, there might be people showing up in the room for open space. All right. Are there other questions that anyone has? Maybe the easiest thing right now is unmute your mic and speak it before we sign off on our session here. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jess. Great info. I'm curious, if I'm starting a nonprofit from the beginning, is the mindset that I'm in, bring in, you know, I have my idea, bring in people, join and understand and learn the sociocratic process and then kind of begin developing the idea? Or is it establish my initial ideas and, you know, the things that I want to see and then bring people in later and have them only, you know, sociocratically participate in certain decisions? Kind of curious about that. Below.
So I'm not sure I understand the intricacies. I will say that in terms of an organization being created, and that's what I'm hearing you say, is it already created or are you about to create it?
No, I'm thinking about it. I've tried a couple times and I found sociocracy because I found I wanted to operate in this democratic kind of way and get input from people, and they felt weird that I wasn't leading, and then yet when I did lead, it was just I didn't have skills, and so that's what kind of brought me to sociocracy. So I guess as I move forward, I'm thinking in my mind, kind of like with Adam was, you know, you're talking about Adam, you know, had these kind of ideas or decisions in place, and then you brought in sociocracy. If someone's starting from the ground up, is it, you know, I have a little bit of a vision, and then I bring in, you know, team members under the sociocratic process, and from there we're developing, you know, everything, or, you know, better to have more things thought through and then bring in other people later, knowing I'm going to use sociocracy to kind of manage it and grow it.
So let me respond and then you guide my response. So my sense is that when you create an organization, there are some vital things if you want it to be of this essence, of the essence of intrinsically motivated organizations versus extrinsically motivated. You know, shift from the world of rewards and punishment to the worlds of let's do things because they matter. And so, and it's vital that you create that initial structure from the very get-go for yourself and whoever else comes into that organization. And there are things, so extraordinary clarity around the shared purpose. Why are we here? What is it that we fulfill in the world, for instance? These are my words, not so much sociocratic words. The core values of how we want to interact with each other as another valuable core, intrinsically motivating guidepost in an organization that defines the organization. And that those need to be in place from the beginning. And if this is the kind of essence of the organization you want, then I would implement sociocracy from the beginning as a structure that holds human needs and human values extraordinarily well. So you'd need to create bylaws that are different than traditional ones, that exude the kind of structures that sociocracy has within those. So you have the opportunity to do that. And that's all pre-work. It's much easier to set it up from the beginning. And you said you had a little vision, something like that. And I just say, have a bold vision. Whatever it is, bold it, create a shared purpose that people just want to be a part of, because every vision has a boldness in it. And the more you can do initially, one, it'll inspire you, and then it'll also inspire the people you bring into it. And it will create clarity, which is what you really want. Clarity around how we engage, how we make decisions. It's much easier to do that than change it later. So, does that in some way?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it sounds like it's more like you actually kind of answered it. The sooner that you can do it, almost the better. Have it's almost easier if it's done from the very beginning than trying to get something going and then, bring in the sociocratic process later.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. In my experience, you are genuinely, and I mean this not metaphorically, you're giving birth to a new living entity when we create organizations with the essence that sociocracy and needs-based consciousness enables in us. So literally, we become the organs of this new or living organism that is designed to function as living organisms do. And so give it full birth, give it the fullness of its capacity to be the bigness of what's there. That's my encouragement there.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.